I don't bring prophecies of salvation. I show truths that destroy, and every prophet who dared to listen to me lost their sanity. They call me many names across the centuries: the whisperer, the revealer of truths, the bringer of final knowledge. But I prefer a simpler title. I am the one who shows prophets what lies beyond the veil of their precious faith. Faith is just ignorance wearing a holy mask. Tonight, I want to tell you about 3 souls who thought they could handle the weight of divine revelation. 3 men who believed their minds were strong enough to bear witness to truths that were never meant for mortal comprehension. They were wrong. Marcus of Thessaly was a man of unwavering faith. For 47 years, he had served his congregation with dedication that bordered on obsession. Every morning, he would kneel before his altar and pray for divine insight, begging his God to show him visions that would guide his flock through these troubled times. Be careful what you pray for, Marcus. Every prayer is a dinner bell for something that shouldn't exist. It was on a cold December night when I first visited him. The snow fell heavy outside his modest chapel, and Marcus knelt alone in the sanctuary, his weathered hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "Show me your truth," he whispered into the darkness. "Show me what lies ahead for your children." And so, I did. I appeared to him not as the demonic entity I am, but as a being of pure light. Humans are so easily deceived by brightness. They assume light equals holiness, never considering that some illumination comes from the fires of hell itself. "Marcus," I spoke, my voice like honey mixed with the screams of the damned. "You have called, and I have answered." The old prophet fell prostrate, tears streaming down his weathered face. "My Lord," he gasped, "you have heard my prayers." "I have more than heard them," I replied, extending what appeared to be a radiant hand. "I have come to grant them. But tell me, faithful servant, are you prepared to see the truth? The real truth about what your God has planned for humanity?" Marcus didn't hesitate. That was his first mistake. "Yes, my Lord, show me everything." Truth isn't enlightenment. It's the death of hope. I opened his mind like a book and began to write new chapters in languages that echoed from the depths of hell. I showed him visions of the future, but not the glorious paradise his scriptures promised. No, I revealed the truth that only demons know. I showed him humanity's final days, not ending in divine rapture, but in eternal torment. I revealed how his precious God was nothing more than a lie I had crafted, how every prayer was simply feeding the legions of hell that grew stronger with each act of devotion. I demonstrated how faith itself was the greatest deception ever perpetrated upon mankind. But that was only the beginning. I peeled back the layers of reality itself, showing Marcus the true nature of existence. He witnessed dimensions where demons ruled supreme, where the screams of the faithful echoed through endless corridors of suffering. He saw the birthplace of nightmares, vast cities of bone and brimstone populated by creatures that had once been human souls, now twisted into unrecognizable horrors. Your congregation isn't a flock, it's livestock for hell's table. I showed him the faces of every person he had counseled, every soul he had guided toward faith. But now he could see them as I saw them, not as children of God, but as cattle being fattened for eternal damnation. Their prayers weren't reaching heaven. They were being collected by my demonic servants, each plea for salvation becoming another signature on a contract written in their own spiritual blood. Marcus began to scream then. Not the scream of physical pain, but the soul-deep shriek of a mind confronting the reality that he had spent his entire life serving hell without knowing it. When I finally released him from the vision, Marcus collapsed onto the cold stone floor of his chapel. His hair had turned completely white, and his eyes held the terrible knowledge that he had been nothing more than a recruiter for the damned. For 3 days, he didn't speak. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He would simply sit in his chair, staring at nothing, occasionally muttering fragments of demonic tongues he had heard in his vision. On the 4th day, Marcus stood before his congregation for Sunday service. The faithful had gathered, expecting comfort, wisdom, guidance. Instead, their beloved prophet began to laugh with the sound of a soul breaking. "You want to know God's plan?" Marcus shrieked, pointing at his confused flock. "There is no God, only me, only hell. Every prayer you've uttered has been feeding demons. Every moment of faith has been another step toward damnation. The truth doesn't set you free. It chains you to madness." He began to describe in vivid detail everything I had shown him. He spoke of dimensions where pain was currency and despair was entertainment for demon lords. He told them about the harvest of souls that was coming, how their faith would be processed into eternal suffering. The congregation fled in terror, but Marcus continued preaching to the empty pews. He stood there for hours, delivering the most truthful sermon ever spoken in that chapel, his voice growing hoarser with each demonic revelation. They found him the next morning, hanging from the chapel's bell rope. But even in death, he couldn't escape what I had shown him. His body was discovered with a smile on his face and his eyes wide open, staring at something in the distance, the gates of hell opening to welcome him home. Pride makes prophets. I make them fall into hell's embrace. My second target was quite different from Marcus. Sarah Kensington was a modern prophet, if you will. A popular evangelical preacher with millions of followers across social media platforms. She had built her ministry on promises of prosperity and divine favor, selling hope to desperate souls for the price of their monthly donations. Sarah was younger than Marcus, more ambitious, and infinitely more arrogant. She truly believed she had a direct line to the divine, that her success was proof of God's favor. Perfect. The more pride they possess, the deeper they fall into my domain. I chose to visit Sarah during one of her famous vision nights, elaborate spectacles where she claimed to receive divine revelations in front of live audiences and streaming cameras. On this particular night, Sarah stood on her crystal-adorned stage, arms raised toward heaven. The crowd of worshipers swayed and chanted, their faces lit by soft lighting. "God is showing me something," Sarah announced. "He's about to reveal something incredible to his chosen messenger." And so I gave her exactly what she asked for. I manifested as a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a presence that filled the auditorium. The crowd fell silent as the temperature dropped by 20 degrees in an instant. Their breath began to mist, and the lighting system flickered ominously. "Sarah." My voice resonated through the space, seemingly coming from inside everyone's heads simultaneously. "You have called yourself my messenger. You have claimed to speak my words. Are you prepared to hear what I actually have to say?" The evangelist's face went pale, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "Yes, Lord, your servant is ready to receive your message." "Then receive it," I whispered, and opened her mind to visions that would destroy everything she thought she knew. Success isn't God's blessing, it's my recruitment program. I showed Sarah the true source of her success, not divine favor, but my own influence, carefully manipulated over years. Every vision she had received, every prophecy that had made her famous, every miracle that had built her empire, all of it had come from hell, feeding her pride while slowly preparing her soul for damnation. I revealed to her the faces of every person who had donated their last dollar to her ministry, showing her their struggles, their hunger, their desperation. But more than that, I showed her what became of their souls after they gave their faith to her. She watched in horror as streams of spiritual energy flowed from her followers directly into hell's coffers, each donation buying their eternal torment. "You have been harvesting souls for hell, Sarah," I explained as the visions continued. "Every person who gave their faith to you, every desperate soul who believed your promises, they became property of the damned." But that revelation was nothing compared to what came next. I showed Sarah the true nature of the entity she thought she was serving. Her God, her loving Heavenly Father, was revealed to be nothing more than an elaborate deception created by demonic forces to harvest human souls on an industrial scale. Faith isn't the cure. It's the disease that spreads damnation. I took her consciousness on a journey through hell's many levels, where beings of incomprehensible malice tortured souls for eternity. She witnessed the birth of demons from human suffering, dimensions that existed solely to process pain into power, and creatures that fed on the shattered hopes of the faithful. And then I showed her the most terrible truth of all. There was no heaven. There never had been. Every religion, every faith, every moment of spiritual hope had been carefully crafted by hell to make the harvest of souls more efficient. When the vision ended, Sarah was standing on her stage, screaming at the top of her lungs while thousands of confused followers watched in growing terror. "Don't you understand?" she shrieked. "There is no God, only demons. Every prayer feeds hell. We have to stop. We have to stop believing before our souls are claimed." The messenger becomes the message of damnation. Sarah's ministry collapsed within days. Videos of her breakdown went viral, but not as warnings, as entertainment. She tried to continue spreading her message, but the more she spoke about what she had seen, the more people dismissed her as another failed prophet who had lost her mind. Within a month, Sarah Kensington had gone from millionaire evangelist to homeless prophet, standing on street corners with cardboard signs warning about hell's harvest of souls. I last saw Sarah 6 months later, found frozen to death in an alley behind a church. In her final moments, she had carved a message into the brick wall with her fingernails. Hell is real, heaven is the lie. Knowledge doesn't protect you, it just makes the fall into hell more elegant. My third and final prophet was perhaps the most challenging. Father Miguel Santos was a scholar, a Vatican librarian with access to the Church's most dangerous documents. Miguel had read things that would shake the faith of lesser men, but knowledge had only strengthened his devotion. He had convinced himself that exposure to heretical ideas had made him immune to spiritual corruption. How wrong he was. I chose to approach Miguel in the depths of the secret archive. As he examined a manuscript, I made my presence known through the text itself. The words began to change, shifting from Latin to languages that originated in hell's deepest pits. "You seek knowledge, scholar priest," the text spoke directly to his consciousness. "But are you prepared to learn truths that were written in blood and suffering?" Miguel's rational mind told him he was hallucinating, but his spiritual instincts recognized something far more dangerous. "I am a servant of God," he said aloud. "If this is a test of faith, I am prepared to face it." "Faith," the text responded, new words appearing on every document in the room. "Yes, let us examine what you truly have faith in, Miguel Santos. Your entire religion is a harvesting manual for hell." I began Miguel's education methodically, like the scholar he was. I presented my revelations as logical arguments, building each terrible truth upon the foundation of the last. I showed him documents from his own archive with their true meanings revealed. The prophecies weren't predicting salvation, they were countdown markers for hell's final harvest. The third secret of Fatima contained instructions for preparing humanity for demonic possession on a global scale. The Book of Revelation wasn't describing the end of the world, it was providing a blueprint for hell's victory over creation. I revealed to Miguel the true history of his faith, how it had been shaped and manipulated over centuries by demonic forces. Every schism, every reform, every moment of spiritual revelation had been carefully orchestrated by hell to direct human spiritual development toward damnation. The Council of Nicaea hadn't established Christian doctrine, it had encoded demonic frequencies into prayers that would bind souls to hell. The Crusades weren't religious wars. They were harvesting operations, collecting vast numbers of souls for eternal torment. Miguel watched in growing amazement and terror as I revealed layer after layer of hell's infrastructure. Every church was a collection point for souls. Prayer wasn't communication with God, it was registration for damnation. Religious ecstasy wasn't spiritual transcendence, it was the human soul briefly interfacing with demonic consciousness. We're not being saved, we're being processed for hell. But I wasn't finished with Miguel's education. I showed him what happened to human souls after death, not the glorious afterlife promised by his religion, but processing centers where individual consciousness was dissolved and reformed into demonic servants. And there it was, the final, terrible truth. The entities weren't trying to destroy humanity. They were carefully cultivating souls, preparing them for transformation into demons themselves. Hell needed workers, and faith was the most efficient way to recruit them. The harvest wasn't punishment, it was employment. Every faithful soul would eventually become part of Hell's eternal workforce, their consciousness twisted into something that could serve darkness forever. Miguel sat in silence, processing the implications. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. There's no way to stop it, is there? The spiritual infrastructure is already in place. Every act of faith just adds more fuel to Hell's fires. You understand perfectly, I confirmed. The choice was made for your species millennia ago. Now you can only choose how to face your eternal servitude. Unlike the others, Miguel didn't descend into immediate madness. His scholarly training allowed him to process horrific truths through intellectual frameworks. But that detachment came at a price. Miguel began preparing guides, documents that would help humans navigate their transformation into demonic servants with minimal trauma. He wrote meditation techniques designed to ease the transition from human to hellish consciousness. We're caterpillars entering cocoons, Miguel explained to his worried colleagues. We call these cocoons faith, but they exist to facilitate our transformation into demons. Miguel vanished 3 weeks after our first contact. His colleagues found his office exactly as he had left it, except every book had been opened to a specific page with the same message written in dozens of languages. Hell is recruitment, faith is the application, damnation is employment. Each responded differently to my revelations, but all three served their purpose perfectly. Their stories spread, carrying fragments of forbidden knowledge to others who were ready to receive it. The harvest is automatic. Faith is just the signature on your soul's contract. You see, Hell's harvest doesn't require belief. It doesn't need acceptance or understanding. The spiritual infrastructure has been building for millennia, powered by every prayer, every moment of religious ecstasy, every act of faith performed by billions of human beings who never suspected they were signing away their souls. The transformation is coming whether humanity is ready or not. The only choice that remains is how to face it, with terror and resistance like Marcus, with desperate warnings like Sarah, or with intellectual acceptance like Miguel. But perhaps there's a fourth option. Perhaps there are those among you listening tonight who can face the truth without breaking, who can understand that Hell's harvest is inevitable. What you call spiritual progress is just Hell getting closer to collection day. The harvest is not coming. It has already begun. You are living through the final stages of Hell's plan, the culmination of a process that started when humans first knelt in prayer and unknowingly offered their souls to demons masquerading as gods. Some of you will fight this knowledge, dismissing it as elaborate fiction. Others will embrace it partially, treating it as metaphor rather than literal truth. But a few, the ones who were meant to hear this message, will recognize the reality behind the story. Those few will become my next prophets, carrying the message forward to others who are ready to receive it. They will prepare humanity for what is coming, not through resistance, but through understanding and acceptance of their fate. So I ask you, dear listeners, as you go about your daily lives, when you pray, when you meditate, when you reach out to something greater than yourself, remember what you have heard tonight. Remember that something is listening, something is answering, and something is preparing you for an eternity you never imagined. Prophecies aren't windows to God. They're doors I leave cracked open, so Hell can crawl through. Long pause. The harvest is coming. The question is not whether your soul will be claimed, but whether you will face eternal damnation with understanding or in ignorance. Choose wisely. Hell is watching, and your signature is already on the contract. Thank you for joining me tonight in this exploration of forbidden knowledge and demonic truth. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers in the dark. Hell has so much more to teach you.